When the Geometry Wars were brought to Wii, it was the first time this psychedelic, previously downloadable franchise had appeared on a retail disc. And those who've seen our review of Galaxies know just how much I love that freaking game. In fact, it's one of my all-time favorite Wii games, but it was also released alongside this game. This is also Geometry Wars Galaxies, only for the Nintendo DS. Now the thing is, Geometry Wars Galaxies is a nearly identical package on both Nintendo systems, so almost everything we raved about in our review of the Wii version also applies to Galaxy's DS. The core gameplay is still strikingly simple and addictive, there's a seemingly endless progression of unique grids to work through, and loads of intriguing new enemies, online leaderboards. The DS version even connects wirelessly to the Wii version, which unlocks even more levels. So it's a familiar and well-rounded package, but there are also some unfortunate problems with the DS version that keep it from reaching the stratospheric status of its Wii cousin. Now this might sound kinda superficial, but first of all, the stunning visuals that make Geometry Wars so compelling to look at are a lot less impressive on the underpowered DS. So the hypnotic particle explosions, the iridescent glow of enemy fighters, all the vivid colors, the eye candy's been toned down for the handheld version, and frankly, that does make it a bit less enjoyable. And although the developers offered a decent remote and nunchuck configuration to the Wii version, it was the addition of classic controller support that made Galaxy so great on Wii. And unfortunately, the stylus controls aren't as good as even the Wii remote controls. Make no mistake, the controls certainly don't break the game, they do work, but they never become anything more than just adequate. In addition to inducing some of the worst cases of DS hand cramps ever, stylus-driven control presents some unfortunate problems that are non-existent in Galaxy's Wii. Players control their ship with the D-pad, which is inherently limited in directional mobility and inferior to the freedom afforded by an analog stick, while blasting enemies while aiming with the stylus on the bottom screen. So the result is a setup kind of similar to the aiming mechanics of Metroid Prime Hunters, only Samus's controls aren't translated quite as well in Galaxy's DS. As the enemy waves increase in size and the action intensifies, it can be really hard to find the neutral aiming zone. You may have to glance at the bottom screen to reorient yourself, and this is particularly problematic for a Geometry Wars game, in which looking away from the action for even a split second can be disastrous. But Galaxy's DS does have one obvious advantage over the Wii version, that being that it's portable, and having the ability to take the Geometry Wars experience, especially one as rich as Galaxy's, wherever your travels may lead you, makes living otherwise somehow seem unfair. Subway rides, bus trips, lunch breaks, visits to the doctor's office, they literally seem to pass in seconds. Despite its flaws, Geometry Wars Galaxies is still a really solid DS game. Because it's essentially the same game as Galaxy's Wii, it is hard to recommend this one over its vastly superior Wii counterpart. But if you have a deep wallet or an infatuation with Geometry Wars, you might consider both, especially for the content that unlocks. But that said, they're still the same game, and on Wii, well, blasting hexagons and triangles is a lot more fun and a lot more accurate than on the DS.